The champagne glass slipped from Camila Rodriguez's trembling fingers. Crystal shards exploding across the marble floor of the Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom. Round her 300 guests froze mid-conversation, their eyes locked on the spectacle unfolding before them. Sometimes love finds us when we least expect it. Trevor Hamilton announced into the microphone, his arm wrapped possessively around Sophia Chen's tiny waist. The influencer's perfectly contoured face glowed under the chandelier light as she pressed closer to him, her red lips curved in a triumphant smile. Camila's emerald silk dress, chosen so carefully for what was supposed to be her engagement party, now felt like a costume in some cruel theatrical performance. The fabric clung to her curves as if mocking her, reminding her of the hours she'd spent preparing for this moment, this celebration of a love that had apparently never existed. "I know this comes as a surprise," Trevor continued, his voice carrying that familiar confidence that had once made her heart flutter. Now, it made her stomach lurch. "But Sophia and I have fallen deeply in love. We've decided to be together. And I hope you'll all understand that sometimes the heart wants what the heart wants." The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Phones emerged from designer clutches as guests began recording, their expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed delight at witnessing such drama. Camila could feel their stares. Boring into her skin, could practically hear their thoughts racing with gossip and speculation. Her mother's face had gone ashen, her father's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Lucia Martinez, her best friend since college, was pushing through the crowd toward her, but it felt too late for rescue now. 3 years. 3 years of supporting Trevor's business ventures, of hosting dinner parties for his clients, of believing in their future together. 3 years of her life reduced to entertainment for these vultures in evening wear. "Trevor," Camila called out, her voice cutting through the ballroom's oppressive quiet. She stepped forward, her heels clicking against the marble with deliberate precision. The crowd parted before her like she was royalty, walking to her execution. "How thoughtful of you to make this announcement at our engagement party." Trevor's confident smile flickered, uncertainty creeping into his blue eyes for the first time. "Camila, I was going to talk to you privately, but you decided to humiliate me in front of everyone we know instead," she interrupted, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room. Each word was measured, controlled, despite the hurricane of rage and heartbreak tearing through her chest. "How very like you to take the coward's way out." Sophia stepped forward, her phone already positioned to capture every moment of Camila's breakdown for her millions of followers. "Sometimes people grow apart, Camila. Trevor and I didn't plan this, but we can't deny our connection." Connection. The word tasted bitter on Camila's tongue. Is that what we're calling cheating now? The crowd shifted restlessly, some guests looking uncomfortable. Others leaning in, closer as if watching a particularly gripping reality show. Camila turned to address them all, her chin held high, despite the tremor in her hands. "Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm sorry your time was wasted on a man who apparently can't tell the difference between love and publicity stunts." Walked toward the ballroom's grand entrance, her spine straight and her head high. Behind her, the whispers began like rainfall, soft at first, then building to a crescendo. Camera flashes lit up the room as social media influencers and gossip bloggers captured every angle of her retreat. The marble foyer felt like a sanctuary after the suffocating atmosphere of the ballroom. Camila's carefully constructed composure finally cracked as she reached the hotel's revolving door. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished brass, makeup still perfect, hair still elegantly pinned. But her brown eyes now hollow with the weight of public betrayal. Outside, the Barcelona evening air was cool against her flushed skin. The city's lights blurred through her unshed tears as she waited for her driver, knowing that by morning, her humiliation would be viral content consumed by millions of strangers who would dissect every moment of her pain. She had no way of knowing that 3 weeks later, a chance encounter would offer her something far more dangerous than love. Something that would make Trevor Hamilton's betrayal look like a gentle summer breeze compared to the storm that was coming. 3 weeks after the most humiliating night of her life, Camila Rodriguez stood in the glass-walled conference room of Martinez and Associates. Staring at her laptop screen with mounting dread, the video had 37 million views and counting. Betrayed bride speaks truth to power. Read the headline on the gossip blog currently displaying her image. She closed the browser tab with more force than necessary, her manicured fingernails clicking against the trackpad. The Barcelona business. Summit was supposed to be her escape from the media circus that had consumed her existence. Here, surrounded by international executives and potential clients, she could focus on what she did best, building marketing strategies that turned struggling companies into household names. Her reflection in the conference room's floor to ceiling. Windows showed a woman transformed. Gone was the romantic optimist who had believed in fairy tale endings. In her place stood someone sharper, more calculating. Her black business suit hugged her curves with professional precision, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun that framed her face like armor. Camila Rodriguez, Martinez and Associates, she introduced herself to a group of potential clients, gathered near the networking station. Her smile was bright, confident, betraying nothing of the chaos that had become her personal life. "I know who you are." The voice behind her was deep, accented with something European that she couldn't immediately place. She turned, prepared to deflect another curious observer of her public downfall, and found herself face to face with the most compelling man she had ever encountered. Gabriel Montenegro stood at least 6 feet tall, his broad shoulders filling out a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His dark hair was expertly styled, not a strand out of place, but it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Green as sea glass and twice as sharp, they seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed professional facade. "Mr. Montenegro," she replied, extending her hand with practiced professionalism, warm and lasted a fraction longer than strictly appropriate. "I'm surprised to meet you here. I thought you avoided these conferences." Everyone in the business world knew Gabriel Montenegro. 35, he had built Montenegro Industries from nothing into a global empire worth billions. He was notoriously private, rarely photographed, never interviewed. The fact that he was here, talking to her, felt surreal. "I do," he said, his intense gaze never leaving her face. "But sometimes exceptions must be made, particularly when there's something specific I want to acquire." The word acquire sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. There was something predatory in the way he looked at her, as if she were a prize he had already decided to claim. "Walk with me," Gabriel said, his hand settling on her lower back to guide her away from the crowded networking area. His touch burned through the fabric of her suit jacket, sending heat spiraling through her body in ways that Trevor had never managed in 3 years together. They moved through the conference hall toward a quieter corridor lined with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Barcelona's skyline. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the marble floor, creating an intimate atmosphere despite the business setting. "I saw the news," Gabriel said without preamble, his voice matter-of-fact, rather than pitying. "Your ex-fiancé made quite the spectacle." Camila stiffened, her professional mask sliding into place. "I prefer not to discuss my personal life during business hours." "Good," Gabriel replied, and she noticed how his smile transformed his entire face, making him even more devastatingly attractive. "Because I'm about to make you a business proposition that will solve both our problems." They stopped near a massive window, the Barcelona cityscape stretching out below them like a promise of possibilities. Gabriel turned to face her fully, his expression shifting to something more serious, more calculating. "I need a girlfriend," he said bluntly, as if discussing quarterly earnings. "Someone intelligent, beautiful, and sophisticated. Someone who can hold her own in high society without being impressed by money." Camila blinked, certain she had misheard. "Excuse me, my board of directors thinks I'm too focused on work," Gabriel continued, his tone remaining businesslike. "They want to see me settle down, become more stable. It affects their confidence in long-term investments." He paused, studying her reaction. "You need to rebuild your public image after that disaster with Trevor Hamilton. Are you suggesting some kind of arrangement?" Camila asked, her mind racing to process what he was proposing. Gabriel pulled out his phone, scrolling to what appeared to be a contract draft. "I'm proposing a mutually beneficial agreement. 6 months. You pose as my girlfriend at social events, business dinners, charity galas. In return, you receive a generous monthly payment, access to my social circle, and the chance to rebuild your reputation as the woman who captured Gabriel Montenegro's attention? Camila stared at him in disbelief. The proposition was insane, completely outside the realm of anything she had ever considered. Yet something about the directness of it, the clean simplicity of the transaction, appealed to the part of her that was tired of messy emotions and broken promises. "You're serious," she said, more statement than question, completely. Gabriel stepped closer, and she caught the subtle scent of his cologne, something expensive and distinctly masculine. "About it, Camila. While Trevor Hamilton plays house with his influencer girlfriend, he'll be attending galas with European royalty and closing million-dollar deals, which sounds more appealing." The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Through the window, Barcelona sparkled in the afternoon light, full of possibilities and new beginnings. Gabriel Montenegro was offering her a chance to reinvent herself completely, to transform from a victim of public humiliation into something powerful and enviable. But as she looked into those sharp green eyes, Camila couldn't shake the feeling that she was being hunted by something far more dangerous than she understood. And the most terrifying part was how much she wanted to let herself be caught. The penthouse suite at the Hotel Arts Barcelona was a temple to modern luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Mediterranean, while the interior showcased sleek furniture that probably cost more than most people's annual salaries. Camila stood in the center of the living room, acutely aware that she was about to make a decision that would change everything. Gabriel emerged from the bedroom area, having changed from his conference attire into dark jeans and a white button-down shirt that somehow made him look even more devastating. The casual clothing revealed the powerful build beneath his business suits, and Camila found her eyes tracing the way the fabric stretched across his broad chest. "I've had my lawyers draw up the preliminary terms," he said, settling onto the cream-colored sofa and gesturing for her to join him. When she hesitated, he added, "This is business, Camila. Nothing more, nothing less." She perched on the edge of the sofa, maintaining distance between them, and accepted the tablet he offered. The contract was surprisingly detailed, covering everything from public appearance requirements to confidentiality clauses. The monthly payment figure made her eyes widen. It was more than her annual salary at Martinez & Associates. "Clause 7 seems rather specific," she murmured, reading aloud. "Physical intimacy limited to public displays necessary for maintaining the illusion of romantic attachment. Hand-holding, brief kisses, and embraces at social events only."
Oh.
Gabriel's green eyes darkened slightly. "I want there to be no confusion about expectations. This arrangement is about mutual benefit, not personal gratification." The clinical language should have been reassuring, but something in his tone suggested the boundaries might not be as clear-cut as the contract implied. Camila continued reading, noting clauses about wardrobe allowances, travel requirements, and media training. "You've thought of everything," she said, setting the tablet aside.
Ow.
"But what happens if one of us wants to end this early? 30-day notice, proportional payment adjustment, a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement that remains in effect permanently." Gabriel leaned back, studying her with those unsettling eyes. "But I don't anticipate any problems. We're both adults entering this with realistic expectations." The suite's phone rang, interrupting the tension building between them. Gabriel answered with curt efficiency, speaking in rapid Spanish to someone who was clearly not pleased with whatever news they were delivering. Camila caught enough to understand it involved a business deal going sideways in Madrid.
I have
"To fly out tonight," Gabriel said after ending the call, "which actually provides perfect timing for your first test." "What kind of test?" Gabriel stood and moved to the window, his silhouette powerful against the Barcelona skyline. "Tomorrow night, there's a charity gala in Madrid. Spanish nobility, international business leaders, and enough media coverage to ensure our relationship becomes public knowledge immediately." Camila felt her stomach flutter with nerves. That's quite a debut." "The contract includes a wardrobe allowance for a reason," Gabriel said, turning back to her. "I'll have my stylist coordinate with you. Hair, makeup, everything will be handled." He paused, his expression growing more intense. "But the performance? Camila, that's entirely up to you." She thought about Trevor and Sophia's probably at that moment planning their own media appearances, basking in their viral fame. The idea of showing up on Gabriel Montenegro's arm, photographed at exclusive events, suddenly felt like the sweetest possible revenge. "What if I'm not convincing enough?" she asked. "What if people see right through this?" Gabriel crossed the room in 2 strides, stopping close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. For a moment, the businessman's mask slipped, revealing something predatory and hungry underneath. "Trust me," he said softly, his voice like velvet over steel. "Convincing people that I'm completely captivated by you won't be the challenge." The implication in his words sent heat racing through her body. She stood abruptly, needing distance from whatever magnetic pull he seemed to exert effortlessly. "I need time to think about this," she said, though they both knew she had already decided. Gabriel smiled, a slow curve of his lips that was equal. Parts charming and dangerous, of course. "Take all the time you need." He handed her a business card with only a phone number printed on expensive cardstock. "Call me when you're ready to begin." As Camila rode the elevator down from the penthouse, she caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. The woman staring back at her looked different, somehow sharper, more calculating. The innocent romantic who had believed in fairy tale endings was gone, replaced by someone willing to enter into a cold business arrangement disguised as love. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lucia asking how the conference was going. Instead of answering, Camila opened her browser and searched for Gabriel Montenegro. The results were frustratingly sparse official business announcements, charity donations, but nothing personal. No photos with women, no gossip about his romantic life, no hints about what kind of man lay beneath the billionaire facade. She was about to enter into an intimate charade with a complete stranger, someone who clearly had his own agenda beyond simply appeasing his board of directors. But as she walked through Barcelona's warm evening air, Camila realized that the danger of the unknown felt infinitely more appealing than the safety of her devastated reputation. By the time she reached her hotel, she had already mentally composed the text she would send Gabriel Montenegro. The only question was whether she was brave enough or foolish enough to actually send it. The answer came as she stood on her balcony, looking out at the Mediterranean and thinking about the life she was about to leave behind. She pulled out Gabriel's business card and typed a single word that would seal her fate. The word yes had barely left her fingertips before Camila's phone rang. Gabriel's voice was warm with satisfaction, as if he had never doubted her answer. "Excellent. Car will collect you at 6 tomorrow evening. Everything else has been arranged." 24 hours later, Camila stood in front of the full-length mirror in her Madrid hotel suite, barely recognizing herself. Gabriel's stylist had transformed her into someone entirely new. The midnight blue gown hugged every curve while maintaining an air of sophisticated elegance. Her dark hair had been styled in loose waves that cascaded over one shoulder, and her makeup was flawless yet subtle, emphasizing her natural beauty rather than masking it. The diamonds at her throat and ears were real. She had gasped when the stylist casually mentioned their value. Everything about her appearance screamed luxury, from the custom Italian heels to the designer clutch that cost more than most people's. Monthly rent. A knock at the door announced Gabriel's arrival. When she opened it, the sight of him in a perfectly tailored tuxedo nearly took her breath away. He looked like he had stepped off the cover of a magazine, dark, dangerous, and devastatingly handsome. "You look perfect," he said, his green eyes traveling appreciatively over her transformation. "Ready for your debut?" The charity gala was being held at the Palacio Real, Madrid's royal palace, transformed for the evening into a glittering wonderland as their car pulled up to the red carpet. Camila could see photographers and reporters lined up behind velvet ropes, their cameras already flashing in anticipation. "Remember," Gabriel murmured, his hand finding hers, "we've been secretly dating for 2 months. We met through mutual business connections and have been keeping things private until now. You're intelligent, independent, and completely unimpressed by my wealth." His thumb traced circles on her palm, and Camila wondered if the gesture was part of the performance or something more genuine. Before she could analyze it further, the car door opened and they were stepping into the chaos of flashing cameras and shouted questions. Gabriel's arm slipped around her waist, pulling her close. Against his side, the contact sent electricity through her body, and when she looked up at him, his smile was so convincing that, for a moment, she almost believed it was real. Gabriel, Gabriel. Who is your mystery woman? Reporters called out. Is this serious? Another shouted. Gabriel raised his free hand, his media training evident in how effortlessly he commanded attention. I'd like you all to meet Camila Rodriguez. She's brilliant, beautiful, and somehow tolerates my workaholic tendencies. The crowd laughed and cameras clicked furiously as Gabriel leaned down to brush a kiss against Camila's temple. The gesture was soft, tender, and completely electrifying. She found herself leaning into him naturally, her body responding to his touch in ways that had nothing to do with their contract. Inside the palace, the gala was a feast for the senses. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over guests dressed in designer gowns and tuxedos, while Spanish royalty mingled with international business leaders and celebrities. Camila recognized faces from magazine covers and news broadcasts, people she had only seen on screens now, chatting casually over champagne. You're doing beautifully, Gabriel whispered in her ear as they moved through the crowd, his breath warm against her skin. Half the men in this room are already envying me. His hand never left her waist, a constant warm pressure that made her hyper-aware of every movement. When he introduced her to business associates and political figures, she fell naturally into the role of the accomplished marketing executive who had captured the elusive Gabriel Montenegro's heart. So how did you manage to snare our famously single host? Asked Countess Elena Vega, a Spanish noblewoman whose jewelry could probably fund a small country. Camila glanced up at Gabriel, finding him watching her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. He was actually quite easy to catch, she said with a smile that was only partially manufactured. I just had to convince him that there's more to life than quarterly reports. And how did you manage that? The Countess pressed. Gabriel's arm tightened around Camila's waist, pulling her closer. She made me realize that the best partnerships aren't just about business, he said, his voice carrying a husky note that sent shivers down her spine. Sometimes you find someone who challenges you in ways you never expected. The words were clearly scripted, part of their carefully constructed narrative. But something in Gabriel's eyes suggested layers of meaning that their contract couldn't capture. When he excused them to dance, Camila felt like she was walking into dangerous territory. The orchestra was playing something slow and romantic as Gabriel led her onto the dance floor. His hand settled on her lower back, the other capturing her fingers, and suddenly they were moving together as if they had done this 1,000 times before. You're a natural at this, Gabriel murmured, guiding her through a turn that brought her body flush against his. So are you, she replied, acutely aware of how perfectly they fit together, how his cologne mixed with her perfume to create something intoxicating. Makes me wonder how much of this is actually performance. Gabriel's green eyes darkened, and for a moment, his careful control seemed to slip. Careful, Camila. That's a dangerous question. The song ended, but neither of them moved apart immediately. The space between them crackled with tension that had nothing to do with their business arrangement, and everything to do with the undeniable chemistry they were both trying to ignore. A flash of light caught Camila's attention, and she turned to see a photographer capturing their intimate moment. Tomorrow, their picture would be in every gossip magazine and social media feed, cementing their fabricated romance in the public consciousness. But as Gabriel's hand lingered on her cheek, his thumb brushing across her skin with surprising tenderness, Camila realized that the most dangerous part of their arrangement wasn't the media attention or the public scrutiny. It was how easy it was becoming to forget that none of this was real. 2 months into their arrangement, Camila found herself in Gabriel's Barcelona penthouse at 3 a.m, her evening gown pooled at her feet and his tuxedo jacket draped over her shoulders. They had just returned from a private gala, where Spanish royalty had treated her like she was already part of Gabriel's world permanently. The city sparkled below them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. But all Camila could focus on was the way Gabriel was looking at her like she was something precious he was afraid to touch. This is getting complicated, she whispered, her voice barely audible in the silence. Gabriel stood across the room, having put deliberate distance between them the moment they'd walk through the door. His bow tie hung loose around his neck, his dark hair mussed from her fingers during their last performance of the evening. The contract was clear about boundaries, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Screw the contract," Camila said, surprising herself with her boldness. "Tell me you don't feel this too." For 2 months they had played their roles perfectly. Media dubbed them Spain's most powerful couple, and their photos graced magazine covers across Europe. Camila's reputation had been completely rehabilitated. She was no longer the humiliated ex-fiancé, but the brilliant woman who had tamed Gabriel Montenegro. But somewhere between the charity dinners and business galas, between the practiced kisses and calculated displays of affection, something real had begun to grow. Something that made their contract feel like a prison rather than protection. Gabriel's phone buzzed insistently on the coffee table. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted to something cold and businesslike. "It's my board chairman. Need to take this." He stepped out onto the terrace, and Camila could see him through the glass, his body language tense as he spoke in rapid Spanish. Something was wrong, she could tell, from the way his shoulders had gone rigid. When he returned, his face was a mask she had learned to recognize. It was the expression he wore during hostile business negotiations, when he was calculating how to destroy his opponents. "What's wrong?" she asked. Gabriel poured himself a scotch, his movements sharp and controlled. "My board has gotten what they wanted. They're satisfied with my stability. The Yamamoto deal closes next week, and after that, they no longer care about my personal life." The words hit Camila like a physical blow, "So our arrangement can end early. It's what we agreed to," Gabriel said, not meeting her eyes. The contract served its purpose. Camila felt something inside her chest crack. For 2 months, she'd been telling herself this was temporary, that she was protecting her heart by keeping things professional. But looking at Gabriel now, seeing him retreat behind his billionaire facade, she realized she had failed completely. "Is that what you want?" she asked quietly. Gabriel's knuckles were white around his glass. "What I want is irrelevant, so it's always supposed to be temporary. That's not an answer." He finally looked at her then, and the anguish in his green eyes made her breath catch. "What I want is dangerous, Camila. What I want would consume us both. Maybe I want to be consumed." The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Gabriel set down his glass and crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands framing her face with desperate urgency. "You don't understand," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I've never wanted anything the way I want you. It terrifies me." Before she could respond, his lips were on hers, and this kiss was nothing like their careful public displays. This was raw, desperate, full of 2 months of suppressed desire and growing love. Camila melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she poured all her own confused feelings into the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "The contract is void," Gabriel said against her lips. "I can't pay you to feel what I'm feeling." "And don't pay me," Camila whispered. "Just feel it." Gabriel's laugh was shaky, vulnerable in a way she had never heard before. "You realize what you're asking? If we do this, if we make this real, there's no going back. My world is complicated, dangerous sometimes. There will always be people trying to use you to get to me." Camila thought about Trevor, about how safe and predictable their relationship had been, how ultimately meaningless. Then she looked at Gabriel, truly looked at him, and saw not the billionaire, businessman, but the man who had spent 2 months showing her a world she never could have imagined. "I'm not afraid of complicated," she said. "I'm afraid of safe." Gabriel's smile was like sunrise, transforming his entire face. "In that case," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket, "I have something for you." The ring box was small, elegant, and definitely not part of their business arrangement. Inside was a diamond that caught the city lights and threw them back in brilliant fragments. "This is real," Gabriel said, his voice steady, despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "No contracts. No time limits. No performances. Just you and me, figuring out what this is together." Camila's vision blurred with tears she hadn't expected to shed. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I'm asking you to take a chance on something that scares the hell out of both of us," Gabriel said. I'm asking you to stay, not because I'm paying you, but because you want to build something real with me. Through the penthouse windows, Barcelona was beginning to wake up. The sky was lightening to soft gray, and the city below was stirring to life. It felt symbolic somehow, this moment between night and day, between their manufactured romance and whatever real thing was growing between them, as Camila said, and the word felt like stepping off a cliff and learning to fly. Yes to all of it. When Gabriel slipped the ring onto her finger, it felt like coming home. They stood there in the growing dawn light, holding each other and watching the city wake up below them. The contract that had brought them together was worthless, now replaced by something infinitely more valuable and far more terrifying. As the sun rose over Barcelona, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Camila realized that sometimes the best things in life came disguised as business propositions. Sometimes love found you when you least expected it, in the most unlikely circumstances, with the most impossible person. And sometimes, if you were brave enough to take the leap, it was everything you never knew you wanted. The Eon D liked this video. If the story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional tales, and share with someone who believes in the power of true love, and let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.